James Drugstore has been dispensing peace of mind since 1932. Let our family take care of yours. Make the switch to James Drugstore today.
And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, and this is Group Therapy, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. We get together as an editorial staff once a week and talk about what's going on here in Livingston Parish. I am joined by my fellow editors. We are going to start on the viewers' right.
Hey, this is David Gray, lifestyle editor with the Livingston Parish News.
And on my left.
Hey, this is Rob DeArmond, sports editor here at the Livingston Parish News.
And again, I am McHugh David. We appreciate you guys joining us today. Covering my end real quick, just want to let people know we did two podcasts last week. Sat down with Mayor Gerard Landry from City of Denham Springs, as well as Mayor, it's strange to say, Jonathan Taylor from the town of Livingston. Lots of good information from them. The City of Denham Springs is doing their first acquisition through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and the town of Livingston is kind of looking towards their future growth. They kind of figure they're going to be the third city town. They're a town right now, hoping to be a city soon, but they're on I-12, poised for growth. Lots of good information there. Suggest you guys go check that out. www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. So we are getting into summer. The official first day of summer was last week or this week? Was it this week?
I always consider it the first day of June. So I mean, that's just me.
Yeah,
that's just
exactly.
It's the summer months. So
well, the summer months, the summer months around here begin when you have that first hurricane scare, and we had a tropical storm sort of flow through, Claudette. Thankfully, we didn't have as bad a time as some people did. Of course, those rains persisted all the way through South Carolina. But we are getting into some interesting times. We talked earlier about the dog days, which are coming up in about a month. And there's something that's going on around then. So, Rob, why don't you fill us in on that?
Yeah, I talked with Andy McLean, the track and cross-country coach at Denham Springs High. They are partnering with the Lashane Running Club to host the Dog Days of Summer. It's going to be a 1 mile fun run and 5K. It's August the 7th. It sounds like it's a ways off, but the reason we're talking about it now is because Sunday is the final day for early registration on that. You can check it out on their Facebook page. Quite literally, when I talked to Coach McLean, they're calling it the Dog Days of Summer, so it kind of said how this come about, and he literally said Lashane in French is the dog. So then kind of got some help on that and kind of expanded on that. So he literally looked up when the Dog Days of Summer are, and he said it's the final 2 weeks of July to the final 2 weeks, the week and a half of August, which would be legitimately the Dog Days of August. That is taking it quite literally, but that's they're going to follow the route that they've had, along River Road. So for the 5K, he said it should be, the trees are there, so it should be well shaded for people who are running.
I was about to say, are they going to start at 5 a.m.?
It's going to be, I think, if I remember correctly, 7:30 for the 1 mile fun run and 8 a.m. for the 5K. And they'll have afterwards there'll be a party at Lashane Brewing. That's an extra $10 on your registration fee, and they'll have jambalaya and. It should be a good time. Proceeds after the administrative type fees that they have, everything else is going to go toward the Denham Springs High Cross Country program.
Cool. So they had a lot of new success last year, and of course, big news, and it will affect the cross country team too. The millage was renewed, and they're going to have new facilities, so
Correct.
That track on campus will be helpful. We expect those bids and things to go out sometime over the summer. I know they wanted to start that as quickly as possible.
And Coach McLean has been big on that since he took over the program.
Sure.
I think it was almost immediately. He said, "Here's what I'm thinking. Here's my plan," and it's starting to come to life now.
Oh yeah. And we had all those coaches come in here during that time when leading up to the vote. You can go check those out at www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. So. Getting into the one other thing before we head over to David, we're going to be getting out quick today, folks, because these guys are going to be going to 7-on-7. Our budding photographer on the right, sports editor on the left. But first, we want to talk about actually our front office lady's grandson. had quite an eventful baseball season this year. Some of you may have heard of Ben McDonald. Well, his son has won a national championship. So tell us about that.
Had a great conversation with Jace McDonald last week. If you guys don't remember, he was at Denham Springs his senior year, and I took it all the way back to his senior year because it's been a while since I talked to him, and he had an injury there, some forearm tightness. So when he only got 2 starts as a senior at Denham Springs High, he goes into LSU Eunice, working in a fall scrimmage, and he tears his UCL. Which for folks who don't know, that's the Tommy John surgery. And so he was really great about just talking about as a pitcher. He said it's one of those things when you look it up, you start looking it up because sometimes it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So he said he remembers throwing it. He said it was curveball, and when you read up and you see what it's going to feel like. And he said the ring finger and the pinky finger go numb and there's a pop. And he said, I kind of knew what I did. So that he goes back to the dugout and Coach Willis, Jeff Willis, the head coach there at LSU Eunice, comes in. He's kind of, chewing him out for having a bad outing. He said, the whole time I'm sitting there thinking about my elbow, and you kind of want to go, I hope that's not what I did, but I'm pretty sure that's what I did. Said he went out and threw 2 warm-up pitches and couldn't even make it to the plate, and he threw the ball to the pitching coach, Alan Orgain, and said, I'm done. So, they were like, you don't know. He's like, I've been reading up on it. I know what it is. And so then, you go through the rehab process of trying to get back. And, he said the first time, that you're on a strict pitch count, and he said the first time he got out, it was 15 pitches, so that's how you work. He said you want to go ahead and you're feeling good, you're feeling great. You just want to kind of let loose, and then you sit back and think and go, these doctors have done this thousands of times, so they know what they're doing. So you got to kind of listen to them and take your paces at that and get to that point. And this year for him, he's settled into a relief role mainly for him. He got 1 start, but he said that was the change for him, was settling into that relief role because he'd been a starter the whole time. But as they get into the series, the championship series, and then that first game they wind up losing, but they bring him in relief, and he pitches 3 1/3 innings. But like you said, at that time it's just like, hey, just bullpen, we need to get you through. So he said, he references, Coach Willis told him a story about the geese. They fly in a V formation, so you've got one guy leading the pack at the front, and then you got folks in the back. The geese in the back are honking, carrying them on. Right. So he said, you learn how to be that, you can be the lead guy or you can be the honker, so, and that's, so I said, so it's a role reversal, a role change for you. He said, yeah, but he said, I worked that 3 1/3 innings and I knew I was done. I knew I wouldn't probably pitch the rest of that World Series. So I went from being that lead guy in the pack to, the best honker in the dugout and to me, that's just sums up what it's like to play a team sport, be part of a team. You learn your role, you fit into it, and that's exactly what Jason and I talked about, was like changing that role, but then accepting that role and saying, okay, this is how I fit on this team. And right now, he's when I talked to him, he's in St. Louis, kind of working on the pitching. He said it never stops,
Sure.
Especially when you're at LSU Eunice. He said we don't kind of talk about repeating or back-to-back championships because every year is different, so we just kind of want to reset it and go, okay, here we know where we want to go. And that's, as a program, they've done it for a long time. I think that was their 7th one.
Yeah. And they've all been very recent, last 20 years, huh?
Yes. So, and they've established that,
Yeah.
and so that's it was just great. I mean, literally we talked, you look down at the tape recorder, it's like, man, we just talked for 45 minutes, and it was just one of those deals where I said, it may take me a while to write it, but it's going to be easy to write because it was just an excellent conversation. And like I told Jason, I said, we got to do this again because it was just really cool to sit down with him and talk.
Yeah. So big year for them, and he's hoping to participate, I'm sure, a little more next year.
Right.
So thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Sure.
And moving on to Mr. David Gray over here. Before we get into the boring news stuff, let's cover real quick that the Arts Council, now that, people are getting vaccinated, COVID restrictions are being loosened, they're starting to get back into the swing of things with camps and things like that for kids and adults, correct?
Yeah, there some for adults, but mostly for kids. 'Cause, I mean, that's really the Arts Council's focus is on children, and they, like you said, everything shut down last year because of COVID. So I mean, the Arts Council, they followed suit. They didn't do any. They for I can't remember, like 8 or 9 months. I mean, it was just virtual exhibits, maybe even longer than that. I think just they would basically just have someone taking pictures of. They would still hang stuff in the gallery, only allowing 1 or 2 in at a time to hang their pieces of artwork, but. Instead of people being allowed to come in, it's basically one person going around, taking pictures of the different artwork and then put it together on a slideshow and posting it online. I mean, that was the extent of their exhibits over the COVID year, but they started to get a little bit back to normal. February, I believe, is when they actually held their first like official class for children. And I mean, this is something they normally do. I mean, especially during any sort of break from school, weekends, some evenings. I mean, and a lot of these kids, it's a lot of them. This is kind of. I guess childcare for some of the parents, it's just a way for them to, pay, pay. It's not an outrageous amount of money that they charge. I mean, some of the classes are low as $15, and kid gets to go there for a couple hours, work on some artwork, learn something new, hang out with other kids, kids that they might not see if they don't go to the same school together. You get kids from all over the parish in this. So I mean, yeah, it's something that they really try to push. And during the summer, that's usually their busiest time because they have camps going on, around the clock. And, a couple weeks ago, they were able to have their first official in-person camps again. So, I mean, it was just, just another sign that things are getting back to normal. And, that's kind of the theme for a lot of my lifestyle stuff is just, getting back to normal after last year because most things were canceled. So, and that'll kind of lead into the next story about vaccines.
Yes. Hey, look at you making the bridge.
I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, this is exactly the bridge that I was going to make. So, and it is the front page story for Thursday. The lottery is open for people who have been vaccinated to apply. There's a
or
big...
just
No, go ahead.
Oh no, yes, I guess I'll jump into it. You don't have to be fully vaccinated to register. You have to have at least received one shot to be registered. That is the only stipulation. Well, I guess to be a Louisiana resident too is the other stipulation. But those are the only two stipulations. Yeah, that's something that has kind of been assumed for the last several weeks. That it's kind of been an unkept secret that Louisiana was going to do a lottery, that the governor was looking toward that. But his thing was he wanted to see how it played out in other states. And I mean, in other states, it, played out fairly well. He mentioned Ohio as having a huge increase in vaccinations after announcing their own $1 million lottery. And yeah, well, the $1 million, obviously that's the big jackpot, but there's a total of $2.3 million that's going to be given away up until mid-August. I believe August 14th is the last day that they're going to draw. That's along with the $1 million. There's going to be five $100,000 giveaways, and then for children, that would be for my math. I don't feel like doing math, but then for children, there's going to be 9 $100,000 scholarship giveaways. So children, they are eligible to receive the Pfizer vaccine, ages 12 and up. Can get that vaccine. And Moderna, we talked about that last week. They applied for the emergency use to be able to give their vaccine to kids 12 and up. So there might be another vaccine that becomes available in the coming weeks. Should have an announcement on that anytime in the next few days or next week or so. But yeah, that's just another way to get more people vaccinated, because it's really hit a lag in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to be interested to see how much that jumps up the next week. You won't really probably see it in the vaccine update this week, but next week you would probably see if the chance of winning money has really had an impact on the vaccination numbers. So like I said, we'll wait to see that next week.
And if you're looking for the specific details, you can check them out. It's on our website, or it'll be on the front page of Thursday's paper. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a couple other things, but want to go ahead and get the weekly Dennis and Cynthia Perkins update out of the way. So if you could go ahead and bring us up to date on what's going on with those two.
Yeah, so last we talked about it, the judge had denied their request for an appeal, to have their trials separated. Dennis Perkins' attorney has argued that his co-defendant, Cynthia Perkins, his ex-wife now, that her testimony will be damning to him, I guess to put it bluntly. So his attorney has requested that. The judge denied their request. Well, last week, Dennis Perkins' attorney officially filed a motion for her to reconsider. It's not another motion to sever, just asked her to reconsider that. And so waiting to hear about that. You said that you saw last night. I haven't seen yet that the judge denied that, but there's another hearing this Friday, June 25th, that will also touch on the Dennis Perkins' attorney's request to push back the trial, which, this trial has been, the Attorney General's office has argued that this trial has been pushed back a year already. Dennis Perkins' attorney is saying that he has another case that is starting that day, and some other documents that haven't gotten written up yet, but the Attorney General's office is arguing that the attorney knew about his obligations with Dennis Perkins when he took on this other case that's supposed to start the same day that the Dennis Perkins trial started. Just a lot of back and forth. I didn't realize how much paperwork goes and filing goes into these cases, especially one of this magnitude. When the two defendants are being charged with 150 total crimes, mostly pretty heinous accusations. So there's a lot of back and forth going on between the defense and prosecutors, but hopefully Friday we'll have a final ruling from the judge to whether or not they will be officially tried together, and whether or not the trial gets pushed back. If it doesn't get pushed back, it's supposed to start on July 12th, and then you will be getting all the Dennis and Cynthia Perkins news then. So there we go.
Yeah,
That's your weekly update.
And that'll, even with the end of the trial, there will still be some things that come after. But we'll be looking forward to that update when it comes in July, or we'll find out this Friday. At any rate, I believe last, but certainly, there are a couple of smaller stories that we do need to discuss. First and foremost, we had a couple of signatures by Governor John Bel Edwards. One, raising the base amount of unemployment you can get, but further rejecting the federal enhanced unemployment.
Yeah.
So anything to add to that?
No. Basically, you said it. It'll start the January 1st of 2022. The weekly unemployment benefits are going to raise by $28, and it basically ends the state's federal enhancement that was already set to expire in September. The governor just signed it. Now it'll just sign that bill, so now it'll just end, a month earlier, July 31st. So that's something that he viewed as a compromise, and that's a push that a lot of business leaders have been wanting to end that the federal stimulus pack, that increase the state's unemployment weekly allotments, because a lot of business leaders saying that's discouraging people from going back to work. So when proponents were saying, well, that means that business leaders should be given livable wages. More back and forth. That's another thing I learned this year. That's what these sessions are. Just a lot of back and forth. Yes. You know that more than me. So yeah, that was the gist of that signature from the governor.
Gotcha. Also, a couple of things with regard to marijuana, and he had signed this bill later than when we laid out the paper, but the story that got in the paper was the reduction of the penalty for having a recreational amount of marijuana, and he also has included inhaled marijuana or smoking marijuana as part of the medical marijuana course. So that, of course, is a story that we'll look at later. But give us a couple of details on the reduction of penalty
Yeah, no, I mean, basically, it's for small amounts of marijuana, which categorizes 14 grams or less. People are now subject to $100 fine instead of being exposed to parish prison jail time. Um, and yeah, just a way there's with especially with a drug that's legal in nearly 2 dozen states, I think, or more than a dozen for sure. I think it's like close to 20, but it's just a way of just removing that penalty that he said, just gives unnecessary penalty, an unnecessary penalty for a crime that isn't seen as a crime, and what's getting close to half the country. So that's really the big thing with that. Obviously, you had stories about that. The recreational uh, use of marijuana didn't pass this year, but probably going to pass at some point in the future, we would imagine, like especially with the trend that's going on across the country. It's kind of the first step to, get rid of the penalties for having possession of it, then, allowing that recreational use.
Sure, and there are some economic benefits to that, and to be quite frank, the LSU agriculture department is already growing it, so uh, I mean, at any rate, so last before we get to a piece of unfortunate news, the Livingston Parish Public Schools are hiring more nurses. We're a few weeks behind on this one. Just didn't have enough space. Finally got it in this week. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the nursing staff had a very difficult year this year. They basically became, I guess, if you will, on top of their duties, of 10 to 6 kids and all that sort of thing. They became trackers and contact tracers and bookkeepers and secretary. I mean, they were responsible for contact tracing, which was the big, ask anyone involved in the school system, that was the most difficult part of last year, was dealing with the contact tracing, because you could have one kid that could test positive for COVID, and you had to figure out every other kid that kid was around, and then those kids would be quarantined for 2 weeks or whatever it was, and so that became the most difficult part of that. So the nursing staff was already kind of pretty understaffed. I mean, they only had, I can't remember the exact number. They had 28 full-time district school nurses, and so I mean that's not even one at every school. But now, including when you add the 17, that should bring it to 50. I mean, you have some schools that will have more than one there, but they won't be as stretched, basically. And so, and the good part about this is you're hiring 17 new ones. You got to pay 17 new ones, but this will come from some of that ESSER funding that the district just announced that they were getting. The hiring of school nurses, the health and safety of students, that falls into one of the stipulations for that ESSER funding. So they'll be able to use some of that, and they're also going to, some of the kids, their hope is to split it, and that's why I believe it's only a 1-year contract, because their hope is to split it between paying for half the cost with ESSER funding and the other half with Medicaid coverage, because a lot of the kids that they service are on qualify for Medicaid. So if they're able to split that, then it shouldn't make a dent in the district's general fund. They're hoping to not be able to spend any of their general fund money on that. They're hoping that it could take care of itself in other ways.
And I guess we will find out.
Yeah, they will find out. That's why they do these things on 1-year basis, so that they can determine at the end of the year.
So last but certainly not least, we did have a fatality over the weekend at Tiki Tubing. Kind of I don't want to, you don't want to call it a big name, but it's somebody that stuck out once they sort of determined who his son was or is, and a star for the LSU baseball team. So bring us up to speed on that one.
Yeah, can y'all pronounce? I didn't follow LSU baseball that much this year. I know how to spell his name, but is it Mikhail?
Mikhail
Hilliard. Yeah. His father, Keith Hilliard, 53 years old, went tiki tubing. He died in the Amite River this weekend, the day before Father's Day too, which that really that just made it worse. Right in that, I mean, anytime someone dies, obviously it's devastating, especially when there's someone who's fairly young. I mean, 53 is not old, and something that wasn't a health issue. It was just a freak accident, basically. And the reports are, from what witnesses told sheriff's deputies, that he dropped something after they launched from tiki tubing. He dropped something in the river, jumped in to get it, and did not resurface. And they found his body later, and they tried to revive him, and it failed. But yeah, I mean, that was just that was a really rough one to get. And especially, like I said, just knowing it's the day before Father's Day. And I saw a piece that that another newspaper, he who should not be named, did on the bond between that father and son. And it's just kind of you just feel for that kid and his whole family. Yeah, he's a baseball player, but he's a person first. And I mean, lost his dad in a terrible way the day before Father's Day. Is just a rough pill to swallow.
It is, and it's a difficult situation. Tiki tubing is a big source of tourism for the parish, but people need to understand it's still a very in some places deep body of water, and it can be dangerous. So please, in the future, if you intend to go tiki tubing, especially with your friends, please be careful. Please make sure that somebody's staying sober, and please be sure to just understand that there are places where it can get dangerous. And I know what you're about to say. I know that they're going to run toxicology samples, but they don't expect alcohol to be a factor.
That's just something. Yeah, I mean, I understand why you said be sober, because that is usually, I talked to the fire chief out there for District 5, who they're in charge of, manning the Amy River. They just got a new boat, because of that, and that's 9 times out of 10 when they, respond to stuff. That's the issue, is people are drinking and being foolish. But the sheriff's office made it clear that alcohol is not a suspected factor for this case. It just sounds like a freak accident.
Yeah. And part of it, because I think a lot of people underestimate that along the tiki tubing route, there are places where it does get deep.
Especially lately, because it's been full. It's been, the Amy River's been full. I mean, even though we didn't have rain, before the last week's rain, I mean, the LoSEP, they had been posting, the river water levels, because they're full right now, because we've had a lot of rain over the last couple months.
So it is important. Please be careful when you're going to tiki tubing. So, ending the show on a somber note, we're going to check out here, and we're going to start on the viewer's left. So go ahead, sir.
Hey, this is Rob D. Armand. I'm sports editor here at the Livingston Parish News.
And on the right.
And this is David Gray, lifestyle editor with the Livingston Parish News.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for this edition of Group Therapy, a weekly podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. And please remember that we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. One last time, we appreciate you guys joining us, and we will see you next time.